Good afternoon. It is fast approaching 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akwe. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel, and it is time for World View. Now, this is the part of the show where we cast our eyes abroad to take a look at global affairs and how they'll affect us here in the UK. So let's start with Ukraine. I'm joined by the Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society, Dr. Alan Mendoza. Alan, thank you so much for joining me. Now, after visiting Kyiv, Boris Johnson said that Vladimir Putin's invasion is entering a new phase, and if Russian advances were successful, he would not stop at dismembering Ukraine. Now, this is a pretty worrying warning, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's reflective, obviously, of the reality that Putin has shown with his war in Ukraine, that he's willing to throw everything in the kitchen sink at a foreign policy objective. And therefore, we should assume that if he wants to, after such a victory, lead on into other neighbouring countries, there's every possibility he'll do so. A victory here is likely to embolden him rather than make him satisfied that he's reached the end of what he should be asking for. The reality is, if you let him win, he'll keep on trying to win.
It doesn't seem as though he's actually, even if he seems to be wanting to get more and more and more. And I hear that Ukraine are losing between 3,000 to 6,000 troops a month. I mean, that's quite something, isn't it? Can Ukraine hold out?
Yes.
Then, yeah.
Well, that's the question, isn't it? I mean, I think, Boris went over and said, look, here's going to be a long war. It's going to be a long conflict. That's been echoed today by NATO, long conflict. The reality is that we face, obviously, the Ukrainians having to continue this terrible rate of attrition in the face of a massive Russian offensive. I think the clue to all this, though, is how will they be able to hold out? They'll be able to hold out and, in fact, turn the tide with better quality Western weapons. What we've given them so far has enabled them to hold on with their own bravery, of course, but they now need even more effective military equipment, which includes some things we've yet to give them in order to ensure they can hold out even longer.
And Boris Johnson they're talking of potentially troops maybe being sent to Europe. Do you think that's a likelihood if this carries on, British troops ending up going to Europe to maybe support the rest of the European countries around Ukraine?
Yes, we've already got troops there, as you know, so it wouldn't be a new, if you like, departure to send more troops. The reality here is that we may well need, though, to bolster forces on the borders of Russia, again, to remind Vladimir Putin that any step beyond where he might get to in Ukraine will immediately be met by a NATO response, should it be a NATO country. These are very troubling times, there's no doubt about it. This is a long and drawn-out conflict that's likely to get worse before it gets better. And I think, we are obviously in a state of preparedness to meet the challenge that Putin poses.
Well, Dr. Alan Mendoza, thank you very much for talking to me. He's the Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society.